Hey guys, so today I'll be covering how you can create your own characters for your own video games. Maybe you want to build a small prototype or something in Unreal Engine or Unity. So I'll be going through the conventional method, how you can build your characters using that. And the other method would be using AI generation tools. Now, of course, there is a little controversy with using AI for graphics, and there are certain perks, there are some good sides as well, and there are some downsides I see that when we're developing something for production or something you just want to ship on Steam or somewhere else. So I'll be covering both of these. So yeah, if you like this video, do give a share, subscribe, or just share with your friends. That would be okay.
When creating our own characters, there is a certain process that we have to follow. The first step would be creating the reference art. Now, for the reference art, you have to imagine a character in different positions. So, one could be front view, the left view, and how they look from the back. The other could be how they could look when they're animated or like they're doing a certain pose. So, that can give you a good idea like how your 3D model can be made. The second step would be modeling. There are two steps here. The first step would be low poly modeling, which is creating a character with as less number of vertices as you can. So when it comes to vertices and triangles and polygons, that is like the polygons number and the size is roughly around 30k triangles or less, or it could even be something between 15k to 20k. Now there are two ways to do this. In the low poly method, what we're gonna do is we're gonna try creating a character by only doing it block by block, where we are trying to subdivide blocks and we are trying to get the shape of the character. We are gonna follow a process in both low poly and high poly sculpts, and it's called as blocking. After blocking, we add in and fill in the details. So when it comes to low poly, once you're done with this step, you're good to go. But when it comes to high poly, what happens is we are trying to shape details at a much higher poly count, which could be as much as 1 million or 2 million. So if you have played games like Uncharted and all, so these are made in a software called ZBrush. There's also another software people use, Blender, which I'll be covering in this video itself. So these polysculpts are roughly around 1 to 2 million or more, and in order to make sure that they run in the game, we follow the process of converting this high poly sculpts to low poly sculpts using a technique called retopologizing. And this topology is essential to make sure our games run at a smooth performance. Now once you are done with either the low poly sculpt or retopologize your sculpt, the next step that comes is the most difficult one, and that is called UV unwrapping. Now for UV unwrapping, what you have to imagine is how would you describe a 3D object, and you have to paint it. So how can you make sure that you can represent that in a 2D space? So what happens is you have to unwrap your character along these 2D spaces where you can eventually paint on them or texture on them. So you will be doing this texturing part manually, but make sure that your UV unwraps are in places. There are many tutorials that teach you how you can make clear mark seams and all. So yeah, you can follow this process and it will be easier for you. Well, after this process, there is another process called rigging, in which we'll be creating a skeleton or any sort of bones that we need so that we are able to move a character or mesh in the way we want it to. Once we have created a skeleton and we have attached it to a mesh, there are certain more things that like I could deep dive on. Let's suppose like if you want your characters to have clothes, then how do you transfer the animation data and all, which is of course I can cover that in much detail in a separate video. But once you're done with this process, essentially you just need to record your animations and make sure you're following the principles of animation, because actually, if I'm being honest with you, animation is in itself a completely different domain. similar to modeling. So it's okay if you do not get it on your first try and if it does not look like how you want it to be, but I'm sure you'll eventually get there. And once you're done with this step, your basic process of creating a character is completed. So I'm sharing a tip that can get you started with the game characters as fast as you can. So you see, when we work with animation, there are some tools that you need to be aware of. Especially now, I'll be talking in the context of game engines and game development. So the first thing is there is something called animation retargeting. Okay, so what can happen, like let's suppose you have created a character and you have created the skeleton. Okay, now for even for the skeleton there are certain tools. It could be the rigify tools that is provided by the Blender add-ons. There is of course Mixamo, where you can upload your character and it will rig it for you, provided it is within the certain limits. Then there is another software that I frequently use in my own projects, that's called AccuRig by Character Creator, and it uses machine learning to know at which points your character will have, at which joints will it have the certain points where it can trigger it. Now once you're done with this process, it is much easier to import your model into your game engine. Now for the other tools, now I'll be diving into the AI side of it, the controversial side, so as to say. Now I have used these AI generation tools in my own projects, like not all of them but some of them, and I can tell you based on my experience that these AI models, they do not generally produce a result that you can use in your own games. As for me, because the first thing is of course they will not have that artistic touch. So I'll tell you what they do really good is they have gotten much better at topologizing. So when you have to get your character under a certain count, which you should be aware of when you're creating for your game, these models have created really good topology is what I've seen. Like of course they're not perfect or like a production one, but they're pretty good where you can sort of get by. However, what these models really don't get that well is doing the UV and texturing. Okay, seriously think that texturing is not quite there yet, and even like when you're doing your texturing and all, like there you can run into so many problems because it's very difficult for the AI to interpret that. Now it is possible you could still use it because there are certain workarounds. I will share certain creator names that can you can just watch for creating AI characters, and essentially what they do is they try to create these really high detailed models, and they go to that high poly sculpt method and then they retopologize and they do that process manually and then they texture it using some other sort tools. Okay, so I think that pipeline from 3D character to using AI is still like it's in a very experimental phase. And there's also this controversy, right? Because a lot of people are earning their living through creating these characters and all, because these each of these skills, modeling and animation, are their own domain, and it's very difficult to get mastery and create something that can be used by so many others. So that is my take on AI, and yeah, I still use it, I'll not deny that, and it's completely fine because especially if you're a solo developer, it is difficult to get all the assets. But if you can try supporting the artist around you, like I hired an artist for this reference related work. Similarly, nobody is stopping you from using the assets in the asset store, providing you using it within the context of the license that is provided to you. So yeah, that is the fastest way you can create your character in Unreal Engine or Unity.
These are the tools that help me for the character creation that I'm listing here. One is Make Human, that is really good if you're making like some small game and you're not really aiming for some photorealistic ones. Then there is a Viroid Studio. Viroid Studio is not specifically meant for the games as such. It's meant for the VR community, but you can use those models. They are decently optimized and the shading and all is really good. So if you work on your own cell shading, then I'm sure you can use that in a game.
So as I mentioned before, MetaHuman is also a great character creator. Now it is primarily meant for VFX work, but I have been seeing that in a lot of AA and AAA games, MetaHuman is being used consistently. So maybe you can try that out and use the retargeting and other assets provided by Unreal Engine to make your characters. So yeah, that's all from my side guys for this video. Let me know if you want me to make a video on which game engine should you choose according to the game you need to make. If you want me to dive into more technical things like cell shading or some parts of the 3D process, do like, share and subscribe, and it would be wonderful if you could share it with your friends. Have a good day and thank you so much for watching this video.